is the government the right? I mean, are we looking in the right place? I mean, I always go back to Ronald Reagan's famous thing, the most dangerous sentence in English language is, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think you don't want the government involved until a very late and mature in the stage. You want to do it with those people who have a vested interest and benefit, work it through, come up with an evidence base that makes it conclusive, and then you work out to the government to understand the frameworks which will enable it and encourage it to flourish.
Good stuff. Okay, thank you. Jenny, we looks like we have you in. Jennifer Toll coming in previously from the Emergency Planning College. Excuse me, Jenny, I'm not quite sure what you're doing now. Please feel free to come in. But I've admired your work for a long time. Do you want to come in and just introduce yourself and maybe share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. And I've never been at the Emergency Planning College. So I used to do a lot of work with them. But I used to work full-time at RUSI, and I'm still an associate fellow there. And I'm now full-time academic at Royal Holloway University. So I do have to caveat, I'm slightly out of the loop from this in terms of being as embedded as I would have been when I was at RUSI and working closely with Laurence on this. But the one thing I would say is it's been really noticeable recently. There's been a lot of interest around the Finnish model, and I've had a couple of invites to things like this and kind of other groups that are in-person meetings as well, discussing this. So this is certainly on everybody's agenda, this particular model. And also in terms of looking at different resilience models around the world and around Europe. That's something the government have always done, but they don't necessarily make that public, often for very good and very obvious reasons. So I think there is often a tendency to say the government aren't doing this, when in fact they are, but they're not making that public. And I think that's something to be aware of. The other thing is as well, and I think this has come up, and I think it's been pointed out very well, that the Finnish model is very much based on a real and present danger that is a very hard security threat that the UK does not feel are on its borders. And I know borders are a lot less hard and porous now than perhaps they have been in the past, but that gives a different mindset to the population as to what the threat is and how real the threat is. There's been a lot of talk and discussion and kind of reflection following COVID of what a resilience model for COVID could and should have looked like. And a term that's used quite a lot in academic resilience, and when you move away from kind of hard security, is resourcefulness, that communities need to be resourceful more than they need to be resilient. And that's about kind of having those things that you mentioned, the skills, the infrastructure, the stuff to make you resilient. But actually resilience itself can sometimes be, if you keep getting knocked down and you get up again and you get knocked down, you get up again, you have to think about why you're being knocked down. And actually you need to kind of move back to that. So I think there are real different models. And I think since COVID, there has been I would say kind of a pull towards a harder security approach to resilience, when in fact COVID actually revealed a lot of the cracks in that, and where you needed to go to a more whole of society approach about things like, where do you get your food from? Who makes sure that an old person who lives on their own is being looked after, which is a different type of resilience to the kind of resilience that Finland needs to be aware of at the moment from Russia. And I think those two don't necessarily always sit comfortably together. And how those are actually played out by the government, I think, is incredibly complex and complicated, more than it usually is, when you've got on one hand the threat from Russia, which is not only the military threat, but the threat to food security, to electricity supply, potentially the cyber threat as well, while you've still actually got those, I'd say, non-security threats, things like COVID-19, that often disrupt the same things, but need a very different mindset to approach them. And I know that's probably more than you expected me to say, which was, hi, Laurence, nice to see you again. But, I think it is a very, very complex landscape at the moment, but it's certainly one that is not being considered. Certainly, the messages that I'm seeing and getting CC'd into suggest there is a lot of thinking going on about this, and particularly around that Finnish model in particular.
Of course, complexity is the characteristic that we're living in. I mean, that is the jungle we're living in. I found that And I think somebody alluded to this. I think Totti said about starting small. It's much, much easier to get access to and influence policy for cities than it is a country. And I think that is where the action is going to be at. It is at the city level. We can see stuff going on. And, you talk about human capital, the idea of human capital being at the source of everything we do. You spoke about COVID. The greatest gift that the gods can give to a secure risk manager is a near miss. Because a near miss is an opportunity to say, well, okay, how are we doing? In terms of national resilience, COVID was a fantastic opportunity. And 200,000 people died, so I don't want to use the wrong terminology here. But it was a real opportunity for us as a nation to come together and say, okay, this is a situation. And we said right from the beginning, we have on record from March 2020, that the role of central government is to support communities, looking after whatever's happening. It never happened, really. But very briefly, and then we'll go around the table. Jenny, has there been learning learned? I mean, you talk about this, but I mean, we're very good at doing outputs, aren't we? We're not so good at doing outcomes, actually getting somebody to move the needle. Are we actually getting better at this stuff?
I think we are at the community level. And one of the things that came out of COVID very strongly was that communities self-organised without the need for top-down intervention. And actually, I had quite a lot of conversations with people who were, either had or were trying to set up kind of civil defence type organisations again at the end of COVID. And it's almost like at the end of COVID, you need to look at all of those groups that self-organised and think about, do you need to bring them into that structure? Because that agility, which has also been mentioned, one of the things where that was really important is that when groups were organising without the top-down support, nobody was worrying about whether they had DBS checks and whether food, if you were providing food, whether you had food hygiene models. Now, on the one level, you kind of do need those and there's a point for them. But also, if you're waiting to check somebody's food hygiene certificate while kids who are dependent on free school meals when the school is closed aren't getting lunch, you're really worrying about the wrong thing. And, one of the things that we're doing now academically is actually looking at what happened 5 years on to those groups who self-organised. Which of them are still there? What helped them to thrive? Did they become part of the establishment? Did they continue to be independent? And so I think there will be lessons from that, but sometimes those will actually take a while for it to actually be clear exactly what those lessons were. And kind of 10 years on, we'll have a better clue. Hopefully 5 years on, when we've looked at what's happened, and 5 years on, it'll give us some ideas.
Hopefully, we're just trying to move everything moving forward. We're coming to the end. There are a couple of questions, but I'm going to go around the table. Totti, do you have any ideas of how this can be done in the UK? That was one of the questions. But do you want to just, Totti, sort of give a roundup and maybe bring some optimism to the conversation? I mean, do we see some light? Are we making progress? Are we doing some good work? Are we not just doing good work? We're not doing good work, but are we getting some good outcomes onto the table?
Well, you mentioned COVID, and I use COVID as an example myself. In when we talk about personal resilience, it was horrible. Hundreds of thousands of people died or got permanently disabilities or whatever. But what I keep reminding people, and what you said about near miss, is that the COVID gave you an opportunity to see what you are able to do and what you aren't. And you can take that as a learning experience on a personal level and kind of look at any type of crisis or change and kind of have more strength on that one. The one thing that I would recommend for everyone following this one and for people within your vicinity is that the Finnish security model, like I said, has national level, regional level, and local level. But one of the big focus on the Finnish model is that every individual has to carry their own weight. So it can't be that, you just sit and wait for the government or the county to do something. You need to prepare yourself. You need to work on your own resilience and capabilities. And that's where I would start.
We're using COVID as a benchmark, and people talk about COVID as this incredibly crisis event, this pandemic. Of course, as a pandemic, COVID is only very mid-level. I mean, it is not a bad pandemic. I was in Africa 2013. I was in Nigeria 2013 to 2015 during Ebola. That's a bad pandemic. Morbidity rate of 50% called COVID has a morbidity rate of about 1%. I mean, thank God we didn't have a pandemic with a 20-30% morbidity rate. Okay, good stuff. Laurence, let's bring you in, and then we'll see how far we can go around the table a couple more times. Laurence, any thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the COVID, and I totally agree with you, David, about was it really a pandemic or was it just something far less? But and Jenny, you'll have a view on this. Is for decades, pandemic had been exercised. And pandemic plans and similar things, were well exercised and were lodged in all of the right places in local risk registers and et cetera, and yet that was thrown out the window. So again, there's something to be learnt there, identified about why, what was the reason, and I think it goes to some of the questions that we've been looking at in the chat about. Doing resilience and then presenting it to government as a way of, I just don't think the politics allows for sensible outcomes. So, you have to follow the money. Where does the money lie and what's the trail? And that's got to be with those on the ground, businesses, the organizations, society, citizens, the whole GDP of local communities, and doing things which sustain those and keep those going, and working at that community level without, if I'm brutally honest, not going. Once you start to go to government, then you can kiss whatever outcomes and whatever sense that you want, you can kiss it goodbye. It's about doing it, making it work, having an evidence-based model that really works and people buy into collectively, top down, bottom up, and left to right, without having to rely on government to do anything, because they should just set the framework, but not actually get into the detail.
That idea of community resilience is really good, but I always say that resilience is like fitness. It's a lot easier to get fit if you're fundamentally healthy.
Of course.
But if you're unhealthy, getting fit is very difficult. It's challenging. If we're going to have community resilience, to help if our communities are fundamentally healthy.
Yeah, but this is Ian's idea of getting it in right early years, getting it in as part of that curriculum, getting that that innate understanding, the knowledge, the responsibility, right from sort of kindergarten right the way through. That's how you overcome that, and that's and then obviously it's down to individual choices and so on. But if you can get that education from the grassroots, get it in, get it supported, then you've got a chance.
It is, and that's where we do get the outcomes. Hopefully, over to you.
Yeah, I think for me the conversation's drifted, and the reason is we're here to talk about resilience in the UK and how we embed that, and what are the challenges that we have between moving from where we are, from where we are to where Finland is. And within that context, Laurence is absolutely right. If we take a top-down approach, it's a necessary evil to begin with. But what we've got to do and go to and get to is that point where Totti touched. You do it because that's what you do. You were grown up, you were brought up into that situation. Let me just give you a situation now, a way of thinking about this. Because I've done all the costings for this, I'm not just making it up. The bottom line is if you trained everybody from year 1 to year 11 on a continuous cycle, rolling cycle that went through, that costs less than £1 billion a year, believe it or not, if you do it the right way. The other side of it, when you come out then, in 11 years' time, you're going to have the best part of 8.8 million people that are going to be on my program or planned program. And I say mine, by the way, I won't be here. I'm 68, so it'll be good night for me. And before then, you're going to have 8.8 million people trained as FREC 3, have life and social skills, various other bits and pieces that we can help ingrain over time in terms of their respect. So that first cohort will be 27. They'll just be starting to have their children at that stage. They'll be starting to go to school, etc., and be going through this program. 11 years after that, you're going to have 16 million. That is, at 37, that is 20% of the population, David. 20% that have already got this mindset. And these people are now able not only to help themselves, they are not only resilient themselves, they also have the ability to start taking care of those that were unfortunate, because we built in that civic pride that exists as part of the Finnish model. It is civic pride that we built it into our system, and that will make it cheaper and more embedded, etc., etc.
As you say, I mean, the concept is there, the framework is there. Good luck with the funding. I hope that goes well for you. And thank you to everybody. I'm going to give you, Totti, just a final words, just a final few words, just as a final summation before we leave today. But before we do that, can I ask everybody in the audience just to show your appreciation for our speakers, for Totti Karpela, for Laurence Marzell, for Ian and Jenny. Thanks for coming in. That was great. Always great to see you here. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Totti will give you the final words. Just to let everybody know, we do have we will be doing a edited version of the recordings. We'll make that available to you. We have a whole load of events going on. If you feel that you want to be part of the ISRM, we are a genuinely global, I think we can say we're a global institute of influence. We'd love to have you. And if you have any thoughts on anything you've heard today, please do share them with us. But before we finally go out, Totti, final words with you.
Okay, so I'm a big rugby fan. I play and I coach and I referee rugby. And currently the Team Finland is globally ranked on position 74. I think we're just right in front of Team Vatican, so we're not big on rugby, unfortunately. One of the major reasons why we are not that good yet is that we don't have any junior rugby. So everybody who starts rugby starts around the age of 20-25. If we're thinking about Ian's project and resilience in the UK, I think you are on the right track. It cannot start with society. I mean, you are thousands of years old, but you have to have the roots. You have to have the building foundation. And I think starting with youngsters, starting with children and changing the mindset is on the right track.
Very briefly on that, 25 years ago, when they had the World Cup in Japan and Korea, Japan afterwards said, well, okay, we need to get better at this. What they did was they said, we're going to have a 20-year program. First program, get our 13 and 14-year-olds in international camps. Send our 13 and 14-year-olds to international camps. Right. Then, next stage, get our 17 and 18-year-olds to be taken on by second-level teams as apprentices in second-level countries. Not good countries, but second-level countries. Next stage, get our people to be on the teams, in the squads, in second division in good countries. Then we get our people to be in good teams, but weak teams in the first division of good countries. Then we get to be in the first team of good teams, international good countries, and then we get into Champions League positions. And if you look now, pretty well every team in the UK has got a Japanese player in it. And if you look at every Champions League team, they've got a Japanese player in it. And that was a 25-year program. And it was they literally sat down and said, this is our program over 25 years. And what it demonstrates is if you understand this stuff, you understand the process, it ain't magic. It's not magic and it's not voodoo. It's process management, and we can do that. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to everybody who's joined us from around the world. Much appreciated. Totti, Laurence, Ian, and Jenny, great stuff. Thanks to everybody else. Stay safe wherever you are. Hopefully we'll see you soon. All the best to everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you all.